All right, it is 5:33 p.m. and we will call this special meeting to order. Only item of agenda on this agenda is the board training on the legislative update. We do have a
My name is Hermleigh ISD. I'm a board trainer here at Region 14, and today I'll be joined here in this presentation with Rose Burks. She's the Deputy Executive Director here at Region 14. Just to let you know, this is not all encompassing as far as what happened in this legislative session. We'll just hit the highlights of some of the bills, not necessarily all the bills, so please keep that in mind. Wanted to get something out because a lot of these things, these bills take effect September 1, 2025. So with that, we will move on. Let's get the big picture here. In the House, there was 5,852 bills filed. 235 bills were sent to the governor, and he just vetoed one of those educational bills that dealt with criminal trespassing. In the Senate, there were 3,162 bills filed. 277 bills were sent to the governor, and one of those educational bills was vetoed, and it dealt with the appraisal board. So some of the things we just need to keep our eye on in the future. Again, these did not pass. A standardized school start date may be on the horizon. Of course, the A through F adjustments, they're dealing, even in our special session, they're looking at some of the testing for the state of Texas. Unrestricted student transfers, again, with the student savings account that goes into effect in one more year. Unrestricted student transfers may be on the horizon also. Elimination of sovereign immunity in some instances. Lobbying restrictions, that should be discussed right now in the first special session, and that just would involve, for example, Texas Association of School Boards and Texas Association of School Administrators, and what they might could do with you or for you, and using public funds to support those efforts. Also prohibiting AI use, artificial intelligence use during instruction. And of course, and we'll also talk about cell phones later on in this presentation. Limit on superintendent salaries. Create an office to investigate parent complaints. You'll see a lot about parental rights in this presentation. Some of the things that just address school bonds and their programs, limit all bond elections to November, was looked at. Repeal of unspent bond proceeds, just the flexibility using those unspent bond monies. 2 year to even 5 years, what I heard, probation if you had a failed bond election. Limit on local government debt. And all these show signs of momentum in 2027.
Okay, my name is Rose Burks. I'm Deputy Executive Director at Region 14, and I'm going to kick us off with House Bill 2. House Bill 2, we could spend the entire legislative update just talking about House Bill 2. It is that large and that complex. There are actually 7 different articles, but so what I've done is I've gone through, you're gonna see some information on your slide. I'll just give you a little hint of that now. And then I've gone through and picked out the most important pieces that I feel like you need to know. And there may be some other bits and pieces or some best practices of things that I may give you a heads up about. But it is in no way the entire 150 pages of information. So we'll get started. First of all, Article 1, the compensation retention article, provides teacher retention allotment, which includes, and you should be familiar with this, that if you're over 5,000 students, you get, teachers with 3 to 4 years of experience, they get an amount of $2.5 thousand, and then the 5,000 for the 5+ years. Those first, second, and third year teachers don't get anything in those in over 5,000 or under 5,000 ADA. And so you can take a look at that and see how much. You should be becoming more familiar with this as you build your budgets for the 25-26 school year. All right, also a little money in there for support staff. And then it also provides some information on the teacher incentive allotment. And here's some of the changes. It creates an acknowledged designation. Now what this is normally, or in the past, the teacher incentive allotment, TIA, has had 3 steps to it. And now they've added a bottom step below, and it's acknowledged. And the acknowledged will be from $3,000 to $9,000, depending on the ruralness of the where the teacher is teaching and the socioeconomic status of your students on that campus. So acknowledged, and it goes all the way up to the teacher payout. Now the master level has gone from the top end being $32,000 to $36,000, which is a nice little chunk of change for your top performing teachers. And then between those two, the acknowledged and the masters, before I move on to enhanced, then, it kind of runs the gamut. It's similar to what it was before, and those are more details we won't go into right now. Now, as far as enhanced, the enhanced TIA, I'm not gonna go into all the detail. Instead, I'm gonna give you a couple of things that will be either where you think, oh no, I'm interested, or absolutely not, and so you should know about these couple of things. So first of all, if you're interested in participating in enhanced TIA, that means you will substantially have all of your classroom teachers, substantially all, whatever that means, must be eligible for TIA and that designation. It doesn't mean they are designated, it just means that they have to be eligible. And now substantially, we don't know exactly what that means. It doesn't say in the bill, but knowing our commissioner and the push that he's made in additional work and grants that have rolled out, my gut tells me that's 95% or higher of your teachers will be eligible for TIA. So that's probably where it's gonna be, we'll know more soon. Also, so in order to participate in enhanced, you have to have at least 95% of your teachers eligible. And then the second piece is you have to be willing to have a differentiated salary schedule based on staff appraisals. So what this means is there will no longer be any across-the-board salary increases for classroom teachers. No, except for maybe the periodic changes to adjust for inflation. Otherwise, it's essentially merit-based, merit pay. So that's the enhanced TIA. If you're interested, those are a couple of the caveats. If you're willing to do that, then you might look into it a little more. We will have to wait for the commissioner to roll out some more details on this, but we know some of the specifics. And then last but not least, this Article 1 requires TA to contract to provide state-supported low-cost liability insurance for teachers, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but there is one little caveat, and I'm going to quote this. This insurance company is, quote, prohibited from engaging in political activities or advocating for issues regarding public schools, including school boards or school districts in general. So, but there's liability insurance coming that will be, fairly affordable for teachers, so that if for some reason they are sued, then they'll be covered. All right, moving right along. Article 2, and again, there are 7 of these articles, so just get ready. One of the main things is it prohibits uncertified teachers in the core courses. Now, this is not immediate, but in the 27-28 school year, all of your reading, math, social studies, and science teachers must be certified K through 12. But let's start with the easier of the two. First, K through 5, not this year, but you have 1 year to prepare for reading and math teachers, and K through 5 to be totally certified teachers. Okay, that's the expectation. So you have a year to prepare for that. Some of us are in better shape than others, but we all know that we're struggling to find certified teachers. So there's that, and then all grades, and this is what I was talking about with the first bullet, all grades must, and for reading and math, and for social studies and science, must be certified K through 12 by the 27-28 school year, which doesn't leave you much time. Now, along with that, if you don't have a certified teacher, you can no longer use DOI to not have to do this, not for these grade levels and content areas. And so you have to send parent notification if there's an uncertified teacher in their child's classroom. Okay, also, if you cannot meet this, and truthfully, there are gonna be a lot of districts across the state that cannot do this, then the commissioner can grant extensions through the 2029, let me say that again, through the 2029-30 school year. But if he grants an extension, you must have a plan in place and a timeline for getting your teachers certified, okay? All right, and again, it prohibits the District of Innovation for those uncertified teachers in those grade levels and content areas. Okay, moving on. One last thing, there is gonna be some grant money, and truthfully, we'll have to wait and find out exactly how the commissioner plans to roll these grant dollars out. You're gonna see this throughout House Bill 2 and some of the other legislation, but there are grant funds put out there to support getting your teachers certified. As a matter of fact, here's a little more information on that. It allows you for recruitment and retaining your teachers. There's going to be a Grow Your Own program. We've seen a little bit of this in the past in grant funds and to allow your teachers to be working, but also going to school and getting that certification at the same time. So we'll see how this rolls out. I'm assuming that it'll be straight to the districts, but we'll see. But it will be for, and I'm not going to read all of this to you, but you can see, you know, a lot of prospective teacher candidates can get some decent funding, 8,000 to 12,000, but it gets better. Then there's new state funding for training candidates before they even start teaching. And then for that, there's some paid residents. So residents can get even more money for 24 to 39,500. And then, you know, you can, in order to retain student teachers, so student teachers now, and before, many of our universities would not allow student teachers to even get paid for subbing. If they were called in to help out, they said, no, you can't be paid. But now, you know, in order to get teachers to come into the profession, there will be dollars. We don't know what it's going to look like. We know it's going to be between $10,000 and $21,500, so that's a pretty good chunk of change. But anyway, so we will see. Also, a couple more things: mentoring, to help pay mentor teachers, and then improving the teacher prep programs. You know, with the reading and math academies, because the goal of the state is to get the reading and math academies actually to be embedded into our higher ed curriculum and through our alternative certification curriculum. We'll have to see how that works out. And then, of course, there's the little caveat there, banning CRT in any prep programs. All right, I'm going to take just a moment to step away from House Bill 2, and let's talk about another House Bill 1178 that deals with certification. Now, with this certification bill, because we are, you know, just desperate for teachers, what is going to happen moving forward is that any teacher who has moved to Texas from out of state, who has a valid teaching certificate from another state, they will immediately be, once they apply through SBAC, you know, State Board of Education certification, if they apply through SBAC, then they will be automatically able to teach for 1 year in the state of Texas. It'll be an emergency type certification. Then once all their paperwork goes in and everything is good, then they will be added to the list and be a totally certified teacher in the state of Texas. Again, they have 1 year. Now, there's an exception to that. If this teacher has a spouse who is an active duty military personnel, then they can get the same thing and they're automatically become certified, but now they get 3 years in order to ensure that all the paperwork is done and that they have everything in place. So that will help with our teacher shortage, hopefully. Now, moving back to House Bill 2, moving on to Article 3. With Article 3, it's the Educator Bill of Rights. And essentially, some of this is strengthening support for teachers to remove students from the classroom. We will talk more about this with Senate Bill 6 later. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on a couple of these first bullets. The district must notify a teacher who may be directly affected by a threat, if there's a possible threat against the teacher. Also, it requires the district to give notification to teachers who are entitled to give a written response or able to give a written response if a complaint is filed against them. So they can say, no way, I want to have a written response, a rebuttal, if you will. And then, this is really what I want to talk about, because again, the other will be touched on a little bit later. Teacher supports. For one thing, if a teacher has to abandon their contract for cause, such as their spouse moves, has to go somewhere else for their job, then the teacher can leave their contract at any time and go. And then the school district cannot hold that or yank it or request that SBAC pull it for 2 years. Instead, there's nothing can be done. The same thing goes for a teacher who has to abandon their contract for a family illness or something to that effect. If there's an emergency and they have to step away from their contract and there's a legitimate reason, then there is no negative ramifications. And truthfully, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if there's a just cause, then that's fine. I'm assuming that no one in Region 14 would be doing this anyway, or be requesting that SBAC pull their certificate. They would be letting them out of their contract. So it probably will not impact us too much. There are a few grants. Let me back up one just for a second. There are a few grants that are tied to this Article 3. There'll be some things for strategic compensation to try and to help teachers in order to, some of you have done things like added childcare, maybe even teacher housing and things like that in order to attract teachers and retain teachers. And so there will be a little bit of grant, now not for housing, but maybe for teacher compensation and strategic staffing where you can't find enough qualified, certified teachers. And so you have to figure out, strategically how you can staff the classrooms that you need covered. And then also some behavior supports. That's also included in this Educator Bill of Rights, which is Article 3. Now, moving on to Article 4 with our special education support. Essentially, and there are a few things here, I'm going to go ahead and roll these out. Essentially, boards must annually discuss the performance of students receiving special education services. And so, that can be done in a lot of different ways, but your administrative team will need to determine that, what's the best way. But if you do need to get that data in front of them and show how well those kids are doing or not. The 8 tiers, I'm not going to go into that because that is still up not for discussion, but TA will have to roll out exactly what that looks like. And those 4 service groups, there are really no details at this point. We just know that they're coming. The CCMR outcome bonus for our special education students increases from $2,000 to $4,000 in this school year, 25-26, which is good because it's hard to get an outcome bonus for any student, especially if you have a student with special needs. And so the $4,000 will be well worth it. You will earn that to get them there. The transportation allotment has gone up a little bit for our special needs students, and so has now you have the $1,000 towards the initial special education evaluation that's starting this year. This evaluation is not new, and I'll talk a little more about this later when we're not in House Bill 2, but when we get into Senate Bill 2. But just know that later I'll talk more about that when we get into the voucher situation. Okay? Now, let's talk early childhood. There's quite a bit of information on this Article 5, so just bear with me. First, required K-3 math academies for teachers by the 2030-2031 school year. We've got some time. TEA needs time in order to build these math academies. That means essentially in 5 years, math academies will be rolling out. Until then, there will be a little adjustment, but we don't even know what that looks like at this point. It also, Article 5, requires the commissioner to adopt a list of K-3 instruments to measure literacy and numeracy. He's already been doing this for literacy, and now it's just adding the numeracy to that requirement. There are clarifications of stipends for the use with reading academies and with math academies. And before we go on to the intervention, let me just talk through a few of these. Math academy, reading and math academy stipends. For one, stipends cannot be considered when determining a teacher's minimum salary. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a part-time teacher, and a part-time teacher gets that additional $4,000 or $8,000 or $2,500, whatever it was we talked about in Article 1 of House Bill 2. You know, those extra stipends. Let's say you have a part-time teacher, they're already making good money because you're having a hard time getting them. Then they get this $8,000 on top of that. If they're rural, you know, and less than, well, not necessarily rural, but they're less than 5,000 students. Even though you may think that that's a lot of money, especially if they're TIA, because with TIA, they get the entire stipend. So they could be part-time, they get the full TIA, if they're a master teacher, that can add up to $36,000 to their salary. Then they get the $8,000 additional because of the House Bill 2, Article 1, and because they're in a small school. And now you're saying, okay, now we have to give them a stipend for reading and math academies? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It has to be above and beyond because that's what a stipend is. A stipend is not part of their base salary. You can't say, well, they're making enough, they don't need it. So just know that teachers may be making really good money if they're having to attend all of these things, especially if they're good teachers. And truthfully, I'm not heartbroken about this. I mean, if anybody needs to make more money, it's our strong teachers in the classroom. So there are some things, some ways that you do not have to pay stipends. For example, districts do not have to pay a stipend if the academy is part of the teacher prep program. You know, TAs wanting to put math and reading academies in the higher ed. Eventually they want that to be a part of the higher ed process, as I mentioned. And so if they're doing that through their either an alternative certification program and it's built in, and or they are part of higher ed and they're getting their traditional or more traditional teaching certificate, and it's embedded. And I can tell you right now, we already have one of our 3 universities in Abilene, McMurray, who is embedding this into their course offerings. So eventually, their students who start rolling out and become teachers, they'll already have their reading academies. So you won't have to pay a stipend for that. So if it's embedded, they're paying for it. It's embedded, because they're paying for the coursework. And so that's already covered. No stipend has to be paid for reading or math academies if it's covered, or the academy is covered during normal work hours. So if, let's say you have 3 days in the summer that you normally provide teachers and allow them to go and get trainings, and those are covered throughout the year, so for days off, then, like comp days, then you don't have to pay for those because you're already paying for that. And you don't have to give a stipend. And then if the rest is embedded during the school year, and so you're paying for their sub, you're already giving them the salary, you do not have to pay above and beyond, and you don't have to include that an extra stipend. Also, if you have, because remember, as we talked about a minute ago, those K-5 teachers are going to have to be certified next year in 26, 27. And so if you've got let's say a 6th grade teacher that you've already spoken to and said, hey, we're going to need you to drop down and teach 5th grade because you're certified, our 5th grade teachers is not, we're going to move that teacher to 6th grade. So if that teacher says, well, I want to go to a reading academy, or math academies aren't out there yet, but I want to go to an academy, and I get a stipend. Well, no, unless the district has asked that teacher to attend, they don't get a stipend. Okay, now if you ask them to and require them to, and it's outside the work hours, then yes, you'll need to pay that stipend. Now, we don't know what the stipend is. Just gonna be honest. We don't know what the stipend is. That will be determined by the commissioner. Okay? All right, let's go through a few more things. Intervention requirements for K-3 students who fail 2 consecutive assessments in literacy. There'll be some grants available for that. We'll learn more as time goes on. But they're gonna watch for those K1, 2, and 3 students that before they even take a STAR test, we need to make sure they're on grade level. And that's what this is about, the intervention. This Article 5 provides a fourth of the day funding for summer reading intervention. So if you've got kids who are not on grade level, let's say the K1, 2, or 3 student, and you bring them back for summer school, you at least get a little money for that, for the reading intervention. And then you get full funding for 4-year-olds for pre-K. Now, it goes into effect for the 25-26 school year. We do know that. We also know that children, they are allowed to go to pre-K for no fee. And so that's kind of as a kind of like a retention. And so that's part of it. The only thing that's a little iffy right now is, I believe, looking at it, it sounds like the teacher students will count for the funding. It does not clearly say that, but it does sound like it intimates that. So we'll have to wait a little bit for a little more clarification on that. But it does look like it says all students who attend, and so I'm assuming that's teacher students, kiddos also. So anyway, but we'll be giving more information out to administrators on that. Okay, this Article 5 increases requirement to partner with private child care. Okay. Oh yeah, and I already talked about the expansion to pre-K for children and classroom teachers. But let's go back to that second to last bullet. Increases the requirement to partner with private child care. Now, essentially what this means is that if you are needing to expand, because let's say you have a lot of teacher kids, you're at the normal, teacher or students who qualify for the 4-year-old pre-K, but then now you have all of these teacher kids that you weren't expecting, and so we don't have the space. So before you start building, before you pass a bond, before you start renovating, you're required to visit with your any of your child care daycare centers that are in your community. Now, there's a caveat to this though, and so I know many of our districts will not have to even worry about this, but some may. So let me go through the caveat of the things that must be in place. For you to partner with the private child care, they must be a Texas Rising Star provider. This child care must be nationally accredited. This child care must be a Head Start provider, and it must be a Texas School Ready participant. So not many of our rural schools are going to have child care providers who meet those qualifications. I may be surprised, and there may be some out there, but not many. I definitely would not think so anyway. All right, now moving on. The next part of Article 5, we're still in Article 5. Told you it was very busy, a lot of information. And again, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. But the additional day school year, the ADSE. I know some have shied away from ADSE because it's hard to get teachers to stick around in the summer and teach summer school, and there's some requirements for ADSE. One of the things that's changed is that now it used to be, in order to qualify for ADSE, the additional day school year funding for summer school essentially, you had to have 180-day calendars. Now you only have to have 175. Not everyone has 175 with the minutes, so that may be an issue. It expands the funding to grades 6 through 8. So it was just K5 for that summer school, but now it's 6 through 8. And it also provides 3/4 of the day funding for campuses that total over 200 days of instruction. So let's talk about this for a moment. If you are true ANSI and you have a 175-day calendar and you're going to do that summer program and you're meeting all the requirements for that, then you get full pay in the summer. It's just like that's, and it allows you to pay your teachers full pay, which helps with their retirement, gives them a nice, extra checks in the summer, depending on how long your program is. But even if you don't meet that 175-day requirement, and you don't do the entire act, so you don't get into the ANSI program, if you offer summer school and you total it over 200 days, you still get 3/4 of that funding. So there's that, so if you don't quite meet the requirements, you can still benefit from some of the dollars. ANSI grant funds are available if you've never done ANSI before, so that's one opportunity. Okay, now Article 6, so we're moving right along through these 7 articles. This is CCMR, which is College Career Military Readiness, and CTE, our Career Technical Assistance, or Education. All right. What House Bill 2 Article 6 requires is reimbursement. It provides reimbursement to an educator receiving CTE certification to cover certification fees. So let's say you've got a teacher who is going back and needs additional certification because you want to be able to offer pathways to help, with your students, because we're having more and more of a CTE push from the state level, then those certification fees will be covered. So it won't be out of the teacher's pocket or out of the district's pocket. Okay, Article 6 expands funding for college application assessments, like your SAT, ACT, TSIA, so that's covered. It also expands district requirements related to setting CCMR goals. Now, if you don't have your 3 goals that you are supposed to already have in place, your 3 board goals, then please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to come out. Richie will be happy to come out, but we can help walk you through that. And the goals are, and I know most of you are very familiar with this, I've already worked with many of you, where you have to have a 3rd grade literacy goal, which is a reading 3rd grade STAR goal. You also have to have a 3rd grade math goal, and you have to have a college career military readiness goal. So those are the basics that you have to have. You're also supposed to collect data and follow those at the very minimum annually, but really you should be doing some progress monitoring throughout the school year. It expands this related to the goals, and let me tell you why. I'm going to go through a couple of things. It allows districts to spend, I'll come back to that actually. I'll come back, I'll give you a little heads up on some things. Article 6 allows districts to spend funds providing college advising for 2 years after graduation. What the state has decided is that, with PTEC, you can get funding and supports for 2 extra years after you graduate from high school. You officially graduate, but you're still under the high school, and you get ADA and all of that for 2 years. They can pay for college, you can pay for all kinds of things, and you also get advising. Because what the state does not want is for any more students to graduate from high school or graduate from college and not know what they're going to do and not have a plan. So the advising is there, the extra monetary support is there for an extra 2 years, and especially for those who get their associate's degree while in high school, they can also have that additional 2 years to get a 4-year degree and have it paid for. So it's a big deal. The advising is just part of that. Updates to rural pathways and excellent partnerships. These are the RPAP, and it's helping essentially cluster in the supports for CTE and those pathways. And so if you can't offer something, then maybe your neighbor can, but you can offer something else. And so you help each other out. There's more money in those grants for that. Let me see if before we go on to Article 7, let me give you a heads up on a couple of things that ties back to this. and I'm gonna quote on this, TEA shall develop, this is the verbiage from Article 6, shall develop a statewide goal for career readiness, including students attaining a workforce-aligned credential while in high school. Now, what this means is, well, if you don't have strong pathways to get credentials for your students, you're going to need to, okay? Because that's one of the pieces, and just keep listening, I'll tell you more. You also have to make sure that your 3 board goals that I talked about are set and posted on your website, along with the data that you have for those. You also have to make sure you're tracking your progress towards those 3 goals, like I mentioned, and posting those results on your website. And then, and I'm gonna read a little bit for a second here, and then TEA must compile all district annual reports, all across the state. That information that you're putting out there for your goals and you're reporting on your progress, that has to be on your website. TEA is gonna go, they're gonna pull that for every school district in the state of Texas. That's your annual report. And then they must make them publicly accessible on the agency's website. So you have yours posted, they're gonna go out and pull it, or they're gonna link to yours or something, and they're gonna have to put it on the TA website so that anyone who's interested can go and look and see how well your school district is doing with the CCMR. Not to mention the 3rd grade reading and math. So if you don't have these things in place, this is something that is not new as far as those goals, and supposed to be monitoring that data and also posting them on your website. It was like 3 legislative sessions ago. But if you haven't been doing that, just call and we'll help you do it, or don't forget, because there's gonna be some ramifications if you do not. All right, now, moving on to Article 7. Last piece of House Bill 2. Okay. It establishes an allotment for the basic cost of $106 per enrolled student. Now, the good news is that enrolled student is better than your ADA, because your average daily attendance doesn't account for some of those students who are enrolled but don't show up. They're absent quite a bit for one reason or another. And so if they're on your rolls, you have to have teachers there prepared to teach them. So at least now we'll be getting some of that, some money for those enrolled students. Increase basic allotment by $55. You already had to pass a budget, so you should be very familiar with this. If not, this is part of your budget. And then the small and mid-size allotment increased a little bit by 10%. We'll take it. This Article 7 requires TEA to develop a list of high-impact tutoring providers. Okay, and part of this goes back to House Bill 2, Article 5 that we spoke about a few minutes ago. As far as those 3rd graders who don't pass STAR, then there has to be some intervention, and that could be tutoring. So now the commissioner must give us a list of tutoring providers, and then that's it for Article 7. Good enough? So last but not least on this section for me is Senate Bill 2, the Education Savings Accounts. All right, the ESAs, Education Savings Accounts, are to be administered by the comptroller. Okay, do you know what I'm talking about? ESAs are essentially their vouchers. Okay, we're talking about vouchers. And if you don't know exactly what passed, I'm sure most of you kept up with this at least a little bit. Rules have to be adopted for these by next May of 2026. Programs begin the 26-27 school year. And here are some of the details. Okay, I'm not going to read these to you. You can see that. Okay. All right, and this is the piece, that last bullet is the piece that I mentioned earlier in article, one of the earlier articles in House Bill 2 about the $1,000 that you will get as a district for each special ed evaluation and IEP development. Okay. The reason this is in place is because TEA and the legislature understands that many of the private schools of these students will be grabbing those, $10,000 or up to $32,000 if they have special needs, or up to $30,000 if they have special needs. They're grabbing that money and carrying it with it. Now it's not carrying it with it, but the money will go to private schools. Many of our private schools do not have these services in place. They are not able to perform and develop those IEPs for the students. And so the home districts will be given $1,000 to do that, even though it won't be their student, okay? So if this is one of your kiddos, you've got a private school in town, they're going to that private school, they're going to do that, take their voucher money with them to the private school. You may be asked by the private school to do this IEP, the special ed evaluation and development of IEP, and you'll need to do this. It's not really a may, it's a must. So when you do this, just keep in mind that what the research says on vouchers is that, and because there have been vouchers all in different states for years, and what the research says is that many of those students who go and take their voucher and go to a private school, come back. Sometimes within the year, depending upon transportation and things like that, because private schools don't provide transportation most of the time, and they don't have to provide transportation. And so things happen, the kiddo ends up back with you. So as you're developing these IEPs, just keep in mind that if that student comes back to you, whatever you put in that IEP, you're also held responsible for. You can't revamp them once they come back. Say, oh no, this is going to be really difficult for the private school. We're not really worried about it, they're not coming here. They could. So that IEP is going to follow that child no matter where they go. So if they end up back in your district at Christmas, then you're going to be held responsible for that. So that's all I have on my section, and now I'm going to turn it back over to Alan.
Okay, next let's look at severance pay restrictions for superintendents and others. Senate Bill 2237 deals with superintendents, limits severance pay to 20 weeks, excluding paid time off, and vacation days. No severance pay if terminated for misconduct, including criminal misconduct. The school district must post severance agreement in a prominent place on their district website. House Bill 762 deals with employees and contractors of political subdivisions, kind of the same exclusions, limited severance pay to 20 weeks, no severance pay again if terminated for misconduct. Governance body determines misconduct. Severance agreement must be posted on the district's website. And then let's look at House Bill 3372. Administrators are prohibited with certain exceptions from receiving a financial benefit when performing personal services to businesses that do business with their own district. From curriculum business, for example, or from other LEAs or ESCs. Violation can result in fines up to $10,000. So on House Bill 3372, it would be, an example of this would be a superintendent from one district, perhaps doing board training or something at another school district and get some payment for it. You can pretty much no longer do that. So the financial benefit prohibition, again, you cannot do those services and have any benefit. It could be a roofing company. You cannot work for a roofing company and be a member of the school district there. So any education thing. Next, let's look at school safety. House Bill 121 clarifies training required for school safety personnel who meet alternative requirements under statute. So those that aren't sworn in officers, it looks at the training required to be a school safety personnel. Boards must annually review and, if appropriate, renew good cause exceptions when not meeting facility safety requirements. Threat assessment teams must include individuals with special education and mental health expertise, so they should be on your team now. TEA may employ sworn officers for the purpose of assisting school systems with safety requirements or support during school system emergency responses. And TEA must annually provide a status report on statewide school safety measures. And that again, all of that is under House Bill 121. House Bill 33, Uvalde Strong. Any school construction or renovation projects requires a formal security review. Each campus must maintain at least one breaching tool and one ballistic shield. And by September 1 of 2026, all public information officers employed before this bill's effective date must obtain the TDEM, the Certified Emergency Communications Credentials. An alert must develop or will develop an active shooter template by December 1 of 2025, so later in the fall, this will become effective. So safety first, another one was the Senate Bill 260, and that just deals with the funding. The school safety allotment was increased from $10 per student to $20 per student ADA. Each campus will receive an increase in allotment from $10,000 or $15,000 to $33,540 per campus. And Senate Bill 571 deals with misconduct reporting, updates reporting requirements to SBEC and TEA to ensure investigation of misconduct investigations, requires the superintendent reporting by the superintendent to SBAC and TEA within 48 hours of the superintendent awareness of the evidence of misconduct towards students, minors by an individual employed by a school district. Regarding, it could be any of these that are listed here, abuse, physical mistreatment of a student, including threats of violence, involvement in or solicitation of a romantic relationship, engagement in sexual contact, inappropriate communication, failure to maintain appropriate boundaries. And by the way, another big thing on Senate Bill 571 is child abuse reporting deadline for professionals is now within 24 hours instead of 48 hours. So anytime any of these misconduct happens, superintendent and or administrators or all school employees for that matter should report ASAP as soon as possible, but now within 24 hours. That is the new law.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about House Bill 6 and some discipline issues. The district discipline coordinator has an expanded role now, but the campus behavior coordinator, now every campus has to have a campus behavior coordinator, a CBC. This must be a single person, okay, who could be the principal or another campus administrator. The CBC shall monitor all disciplinary referrals and report any disciplinary issues to the campus threat assessment team. And these could be things such as a terrorist threat, or a weapon on campus, or threats to use a weapon, things along these lines. Teacher removals is the second bullet here under discipline. Teacher removals have been beefed up here. Teachers may remove a student if they are disruptive or bullying, even if it is their first offense. In the past, teachers have been required to have some documentation and things prior to, but now at first offense, you can kick them out, essentially, out of your classroom. Now, parents must be notified of the student's removal from class. The principal may place the student into another appropriate class. Let's say if there's a clash between the teacher and the student, which could happen. Then they could place this student in another teacher's class, or they could put the child in ISS or in the AP, or even suspend the student, depending on the severity of the situation. Take a look at bullet 3. There's no longer a maximum number of ISS days, but you must take a look at a student's placement after 10 days. I think it's bullet 4 that talks about e-cigarettes and vaping changes to the law. No longer is when you get caught vaping or using an e-cigarette, is it an automatic DAP placement on the first offense? If you are a first-time offender and you're not, the district decides not to place you in DAP, then the student must be placed in ISS for a minimum of 10 school days. And then the last bullet, you can no longer opt out of any Chapter 37 requirements. These are the discipline things that we're talking about here and many others by including it in your district of innovation plan. So DOI, you can no longer use that for discipline, for getting around some of the discipline requirements. Okay, let's talk a little bit about cell phones. Cell phones. Now, the school board must adopt a policy prohibiting students' use of personal devices on school property during the school day. Now, this includes cell phones, smartwatches, tablets, any device that enables students to communicate with one another during the school day. Most of you have already kind of taken care of this. As a matter of fact, we've been getting some really good feedback from school administrators on this, and the fact that students are actually engaging in class again. They're talking to each other at lunch. They're playing cards and things at lunch instead of being on their devices. So hopefully this is going well for you in your district. Now, bullet 3, you can prohibit devices from being brought onto school property, or you could designate a storage place during the school day. Again, most of you have figured this out already. If you have not, there are going to be some grant funds available to help you with this. These funds may be, a little too late, but only time will tell. So we'll see. Now, continuing with cell phones, there are some exceptions to every rule, and this is no different. If required by a special education student's IEP, then you must allow the child to use their device. If you include this in a student's IEP, please keep in mind that you need to put it under an exception, not under FAPE, free and public education. If you put it under FAPE, then you have just committed your district to be responsible for purchasing and replacing any of these devices. So just remember, exception. Choose the exception. All right, there's bullet 2, if there's a medical need, that's also an exception. For example, if a student needed to use the app on a phone for an insulin pump, and they needed that insulin, information during the day, then that would definitely be an exception. Most of these, they're gonna make sense to you. When you see them, you're gonna know. And then bullet 3 is there necessary use to comply with health safety laws or protocols. This won't generally apply to many of us, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. But I do want to take a closer look at the red bullets at the bottom. And essentially what this is saying is that TA and other organizations such as TASB will be developing model policies to help you meet these requirements for cell phone use. Okay. Moving right along. Oh, let's play hooky. Senate Bill 991, chronic absenteeism. All right, on the screen, the first couple of bullets, you can read the definitions to chronically absent and truant. This bill is really about dropout prevention. And so, I'm going to put everything else on the screen here. There is research behind the chronic absenteeism and the fact that it is an early warning sign for being a school dropout. As a matter of fact, what the data say is that chronic absenteeism is more of an indicator to be a future dropout than failing grades. So I thought that was interesting. There is a data collection piece to this that it will be done via PEEMS, so your PEEMS people will need to be keeping up with this information, and the data will be made available to the public. And then let's talk Senate Bill 10 with the 10 Commandments. I love the fact that that's connected, 10 and 10. You must display in a conspicuous place in every classroom a durable poster or framed copy of the 10 Commandments, if they're donated. And you see the requirements there. Nothing crazy, but you can see the requirements. Bullet 3, I think, it requires schools to accept donated posters. Bullet 4, allows schools to use public funds, okay? So I'm gonna read for just a moment, I'm gonna read some of the text from the actual bill. And I quote, a public elementary or secondary school in which each classroom does not include a poster or framed copy of the 10 Commandments as required by subsection A, may, but is not required to purchase posters or copies that meet the requirements of subsection B using district funds. Okay, so this is pulled straight from legislation. And again, if they're donated, you must take them. If they're not donated and no one says anything, then you do not have to go out and spend your own local dollars in order to, put those posters up in your classroom. The last couple of bills, Attorney General is supposed to be supporting any district that's had a lawsuit or will have something filed against them. That's already taken place. There's already a lawsuit over the bill. As a matter of fact, we've had a preliminary injunction that impacts 11 school districts across the state of Texas. Most of these are, they are larger school districts, and they're in the, some of the Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston area. No one in Region 14 is impacted. So on September 1, this goes into place for us. So just keep in mind, you do not have to go out and purchase these. But if someone donates them, you do have to accept them, as long as they meet the requirements that are on the screen. All right, that's it for me now. Let's send it back to Alan. Thanks.
Next, let's look at some particular bills that focus on school boards. Just a heads up here, there's quite a few of these. House Bill 1522. Notice of open meetings. You have 3 days to post your agenda in advance. That's effective September 1 of 2025. So your September board meeting need to adhere to a lot of these things here. So it's always been the 72 hours in advance notice, but now it's 3 business days in advance. So no longer can you post an agenda on Friday and have a Monday night meeting. So 3 business days in advance. If you're adopting the budget, notice must include a physical copy of the proposed budget unless it is posted on the homepage of the district's website. It must include a taxpayer impact statement showing the impact to the median valued homestead property, comparing the tax bill in dollars for the current fiscal year to an estimate of the tax bill if the proposed budget is adopted. Senate Bill 413 also says that you have your school board minutes must document each trustee's attendance and your voting record. Most of this is already on your board book, and your superintendent can utilize what's there to run a copy of that and post it. Must post regular and special board meetings or call board meetings on the district's website within 7 days. They don't have to be approved minutes, just minutes, and then if you have to go back, I guess you can have a corrected copy later on. So all regular and special board meetings must be recorded. And as far as I know right now, it's the minimum is audio. You can do video, but the way I understand it is it must be audio and must be available to the public. A few other things, Senate Bill 11 authorizes a district board of trustees by record vote on a resolution to adopt a policy requiring every campus to provide students and employees with an opportunity to participate in a period of prayer and reading of the Bible or other religious text on each school day. House Bill 3629 prohibits a person who was required to register as a sex offender from being eligible to serve on the Board of Trustees of your school district. House Bill 3112, deliberations of cybersecurity measures, policies, contracts intended to protect your critical infrastructure of your district are not required to be in open meetings. It also exempts the Public Information Act requirements for this information to be available for the public. It, along with your safety measures, safety, security, and cybersecurity, all are exempt from Open Meetings Act now. Senate Bill 843, TEA must establish a database to track all bonds, taxes, and bond-related projects, and districts must report all of this information. Senate Bill 1453, when setting INS rates, districts cannot adopt a tax rate higher than what is required to pay their debt that year without an explicit board vote authorizing that higher amount. If the board authorizes a higher amount, districts must publish how much higher or how much lower the INS rate would have been otherwise. So you have to again, you have to publish the difference of what you could have had as far as the lower tax rate there. House Bill 1458 authorizes school boards to allow the chief of police or a school's police department to appoint reserve police officers for the district. The board has the ability to limit the number of those that were appointed. House Bill 3711, now an offense under the Open Meetings Act committed by a county or municipal officer or a school board member of the trustees is an offense against public administration. So now you could be under investigation by the Public Integrity Unit within the DPS. Senate Bill 204, new board member training will require focusing on parental rights, and that's by the school board of a state board of education. And more information to follow on that as far as your required school board training for the year. Senate Bill 1173, purchasing contracting limits under the Texas Education Code, has been raised to $100,000 if that applies to you. Immunity, House Bill 4623, applies to superintendent, administrators, educational leaders, chief executive officer of the school, parent principals, teachers, substitute teachers, supervisors, school social workers, school counselors, nurses, basically every employee of the school district, and also you as a school board member. If a school that is negligent, grossly negligent, or reckless, or engages in intentional misconduct in hiring, supervising, or employing a professional school employee, you become liable for an act or omission that is considered sexual misconduct or failure to report suspected child abuse or neglect under this chapter. The professional employee who committed the act or omission on this claim is based upon the name so you would be a defendant in this case. And each claim plus court costs and attorney fees is up to $500,000. Immunity is waived by the school and the individual. So you really need to check out your hiring procedures and make sure that you're hiring the right people and they do not have any of this in their background. Next, let's look at the GPA, your grade point average for students, the calculations. Under Senate Bill 1191, it requires the Commissioner of Education to develop a standard uniform method of computing a student's GPA that gives equal weight to advanced non-CTE, AP, IB, and on-ramps, dual enrollment, and dual credit courses. Provides a differentiated weight for workforce dual credit courses of a student's GPA. And it requires school districts to adopt this method to calculate a student's GPA. So it sounds like it's going to be more uniform across the state of Texas on calculations of student grade point averages. Let's now turn to UIL extracurricular bills. One that's got a lot of attention is Senate Bill 2929. Now allows referees, judges, and other officials at extracurricular activities to eject spectators without first issuing a verbal warning. So just be careful who you sit by, I guess, because an official, for example, at a basketball game can just kick you out and make you leave without a warning. Also, if you don't know already, learn about the 3 strikes that a school district can get in a year as far as from the UIL. So we want to practice good sportsmanship always. Senate Bill 401 requires, rather than allows, a public school to provide an otherwise eligible non-enrolled student the opportunity to participate in UIL activities on behalf of the school unless the school district board or governing board of the charter school or school district adopt a policy declining to grant the opportunity to participate. So now every year you basically have to opt in or out, allowing homeschoolers, for example, to participate in your school's extracurricular activities. I think the new bill, Senate Bill 401, did not mention anything about they were going to stay neutral as far as financial responsibilities there. The old rule was if you allowed them to play, you got up to $1,500 a activity. So I think that's still into play there, that you get $15 or $1,500 for every sport that they participated in. Senate Bill 865 adds CPR and AED training and certification to sponsors and others, including student trainers. So look at the commissioner's list of those. Basically, you have anybody at your school district does anything as far as sponsoring a UIL activity, they need to have CPR, first aid, and AED, even stop the bleed training probably. House Bill 121 requires districts to develop a safety plan for extracurricular activities within the district. Hopefully you've already done that. Example, if a storm comes up at a football game, what are you going to do evacuation-wise of that, or a gymnasium or something? Senate Bill 2398, TEA will provide a forum for concussion accommodations for all students, not just those that are in UIL activities, but for all students on your campus. Parental rights and responsibilities. Senate Bill 204 requires TEA to create no later than January 1st, 2026, so kind of mid-year, and maintain a handbook that explains all rights of the parent regarding the education of the parent's child, including a student's right that the parent may enforce on the student's behalf. Senate Bill 1049 requires a school district, by request of a parent or legal guardian, to excuse that student from attending to attend a release from attendance, to attend a release time course defined as a course in religious by a private entity for at least 1 but no more than 5 hours per week. Senate Bill 12, provisions regarding parental rights, school district grievance policies, and prohibition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, among other duties. Senate Bill 11 allows a school district to adopt a policy requiring a period of prayer or reading the Bible or other religious texts subject to parent permission. Boards must take a recorded vote on such a policy within 6 months, again, 6 months of the effective date. Library books, they've been in the news quite a bit the last 2 or 3 years. So let's look at Senate Bill 13. Entitles parents to access information related to library books accessed by their children. Clarifies the meaning of harmful, profane, and indecent content. Permits local library councils to perform material reviews, and has specifics that challenge must be accepted by any resident, parent, or staff member, and the library council must offer a recommendation to the challenge within 90 days of receipt of those challenges. Next, Senate Bill 12 also has some grievances and parental rights in it, clarifies the process for grievances, as far as the process, the filings, and the timelines of those grievances. Grievance policies must be posted online now, allowed to be submitted online, and provide information on how to appeal decisions at each level. So you have to have all of this online now. After 5 successful parental grievances from the Commissioner of Appeals, superintendents must appear in front of the State Board of Education. Parental engagement policies that include an online portal to collect parent comments, provide for parent comments at the beginning of each school board meeting, requires board meetings outside working hours, requires parental participation plans that must be communicated annually. So again, I would be even careful when I have board meetings, make sure they're not during the so-called work day. Adopt policies relating to the publishing of instructional plans and a syllabi for each course prior to the beginning of the semester. Again, with Senate Bill 12, requires 1-day notice to parents when it is suspected that a criminal offense has been committed against their child. So you need to now notify the parents as soon as possible. Requires 2 parent conferences instead of 1. Human sexuality instruction is now an opt-in, not an opt-out. So parental permission must be given to opt-in to human sexuality instruction. DEI, gender transitioning support, sexual orientation, and identity instructions, all are prohibited. And it is required for a new facilities usage report to TEA. Trustees' names and emails must also be sent to TEA. So anytime you have a change in your board, those names and emails must be sent to the TEA. Property taxes, homestead exemptions, Senate Bill 4 and 23. I believe this is up to a voter approval in November. If it's approved, your homestead exemption will increase from $100,000 to $140,000, again pending that voter approval. Increased elderly and disabled exemption from $10,000 to $60,000 pending on voter approval. So if you're above 65, it could go up to $200,000 with those 2 combinations there. Personal business exemptions, this is in 2027 to $125,000 pending, again, voter approval. And there's a no hold harmless there. Districts to receive hold harmless funding from the state in the amount reduced in INS collections from homestead increase gives INS debt as of September 1. All 25-26 funding plans assume the passage of these provisions. So what they're looking at now as far as the start of this school year is all of these will be factored in. Senate Bill 546, effective September 1, 2025. This is just an extension of what they've done in the past on seatbelts in school buses, just making it a little more difficult for schools not to have seatbelts on their buses. Regardless of what year the bus was manufactured, they should have seatbelts on them. But it does provide for an exception if a district determines it cannot comply for budgetary reasons. It must submit to TEA and present in a public meeting of the board a report that includes the number of buses and the estimated cost to equip those buses. So as you phase out those older buses, I would definitely put new seatbelts on the new buses. We understand, and I think TEA and the state understands, it's not very cost effective on some of these older buses to refurbish and put new seatbelts on there, or seatbelts. It also requires TEA to collect information from all school districts and report to the governor by January 1st of 2027. So it's a year of collection this year, but again, pay attention to your school buses, and for that matter, it's any vehicle that transports your students. It should be a seat belt for every student on that vehicle. We'll end with this. The special session is actually, as we are recording this, they're looking to wind down the first special session. I think the governor will call another one. There's a lot right now on the redistricting, the mapping for the state of Texas as far as Democrats and Republicans. Some things that they worked on, and the governor called the special session for some of the items were flood warning systems and communications due to the floods of July 4th down in the hill country, looking at the STAR test, cutting the property taxes, protecting children and all from THC, and to regulate the hemp products, protect unborn children. Again, we mentioned earlier, ban taxpayer public funds to fund lobbying on behalf of school districts is one. Protect human trafficking victims, protect women's workspaces, and several others. So we might add a few more in the next week to this as it becomes available. Again, thanks for your time, and we do appreciate everything that you do for the students of your school district, and have a nice day. Thank you.
I'm gonna print the test out.
Okay.
You gotta get those ones. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.